Welcome to Go Lurk Yourself, a podcast about streaming and playing video games on the internet. My name is Krunnky.
Sorry, I'm Gorby.
Hey, Gorby, welcome back. How you doing?
Good. I'm just not used to being cued in like that anymore, and I apologize.
No, it's just fine. Actually, I've been thinking about changing it. We've been doing it this way for like 3 years, so I'm kind of stuck.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the right way. I just took a drink of coffee like an idiot.
We got you. We got you drinking. So if you guys notice, it's a little earlier than we normally record on a Sunday here, but we wanted to sneak this in. We both have kids and wanted to do everything before the family got up and started making a bunch of noise.
Exactly.
This week we were talking about this game that came out maybe a week and a half ago called Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. It's one of my favorite games of all time, so if Gorby says anything bad about it, he and I are going to fight, so get ready for that. No, I'm well aware of the game's shortcomings, but I love it anyway. So you've never played a Xenoblade before, right?
No, I actually played the second one on your referral.
That's right. Yeah, it's my fault. So you didn't learn your lesson the first time.
I really like the second one. I really like this one. It's interesting, but I'll lead back to you for right now. I've got a couple of thoughts.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about it. I'll first of all, if you guys have not played it, by the way, everyone, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see highlights or video clips from the show. If you're listening to this on the podcast, over at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Krunnky with 2 N's. We are uploading all the episodes there like 24 hours after they hit the podcast catcher. So go check that out if you want to see the video and support us there. But if you've never played a Xenoblade game before, basically it is a action-oriented party management JRPG with a very, I don't know, it's an unusual story for me. I think some people have said it's kind of feels generic when you start out. But
so far that's where I'm at but I'm just starting to get going. I think 25 hours into the game.
Oh yeah, I mean the game is complex. What drew me to it initially was the fact that I'd never heard of it in the Americas. It was I've talked about this a little bit before, so I'll keep it short. In America, it never was supposed to come out. They released it in Japan in like the early 2010s, and there was a group of fans who had imported it and loved it and wanted to see it localized. So they started this fan letter writing campaign and social media campaign called Operation Rainfall to bring this and a couple other games that I've never played, so I'm not going to talk about those at all, but to bring them to the West, both the UK and America, and they got it. They got it done. It came very late in the life of the Wii, and the game took forever for them to make, so it actually looked more like the previous generation than the Wii. It looked like a PS2 game. When it hit the Wii, a lot of impressions were really high on it, but they said, despite the graphics, it's a great game. And you can really see it. The definitive edition they brought to Switch now is 10 years later. They up-resed the character models a little bit, actually quite a bit. I think they look really good for, because I played the original. If you go on YouTube and pull up the original Wii version and look at it, it's like, Jesus, what happened to this game?
Was it on the Wii or the Wii U, or was it on both?
It was on the Wii, but because the Wii U was back compatible, you could play it there. And then they also ported it to the 3DS.
What?
Yeah, it was on the 3DS probably 5 years ago, maybe 6.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and for a 3DS game, it looks okay because the more polygonal, lower quality graphics kind of I think they even did some touch ups on that. It was because it was just a port, but I think they up-resed like the resolution and stuff, but it still showed its age. But I guess that stuff's a little bit more tolerated on the 3DS because the screen's like a matchbook stamp, so
exactly
the size of a matchbook. But I never played on 3DS because my hands they hurt whenever I played with a 3DS. But
I'm in the same boat.
Man.
I really love the idea of portable gaming, and I've bought several handheld systems. And after one or two really long games, I put them down.
You played the Metroid, right?
Oh yeah, Metroid. I think my first experience with like a Game Boy that I owned was the Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
And I had shockingly had a knee surgery and was laid up for about 2 weeks in my bed and played Metroid nonstop. Now my hands were much younger, and it worked out well. And then I've kind of gone. I had a DS, I had a DS Lite, but I never really put the time in that I really should be putting in if I buy a $200 system.
And that's not because you didn't try; it's because you tried and the pain stopped you. Yeah,
exactly. Your hands cramp. Yeah. You don't really know how to hold the DS when you're laying in bed. It's not comfortable. It's one of those things. It's too small. And then as I got older, my eyes. But moving on from that.
Welcome to Two Old Men Play Video Games, or try to.
It's been so obvious for me. And, as I told you, I'm on a 55-inch TV 15 feet away. It's hard to see some of the details using basically 1080p or 720p.
Do you remember last gen when Xbox... Was it Xbox One? No, it was before that. Xbox 360 and PS3, when they first started going HD, they left all the text the same size as in HD. It got all minuscule. And I even remember seeing articles where people were like, "Look, I have 20/20 vision. I can't read this. I can't imagine."
And at that point in my life, I had perfect vision. I never had any problems, and I still had problems.
Oh man, I've been wearing glasses now for about 3 years, and I probably should have. Readers, and I probably should have maybe a couple years before that. I started wearing them only at work because I needed them to read work stuff. But then at home I was okay. And then when I started playing competitive shooters with friends and I was trying to get better, I don't remember what it was, but I'm like, I can't see where the enemies are. And my wife was like, "Have you tried putting here's some readers?" And I put them on. I'm like, all of a sudden I can kill stuff again. So, yeah, no kidding. Xenoblade is a it starts out being kind of a generic story arc, but then we're not going to talk spoilers yet, so we're just going to talk about impressions. So,
sure.
If you've not played the game very long, you don't have to worry a lot. I've played the original all the way through. I played the sequel all the way through, and I played Xenoblade X. There was a Xenoblade on the Wii U called Xenoblade X. That was totally an A side. It has nothing to do with the stories from 1 and 2, but it was just more of a exploration collecting game. There was a story weaved in there, but it was not great in my opinion.
Isn't it the one that got really high reviews?
Yeah, and so the guys who Monolith Soft, who make these games, they are basically a second party Nintendo development house. They're not owned by they are majority owned by Nintendo, but they're separate. But they work on is Nintendo stuff because they're majority owned by Nintendo. So the Xenoblade X game was this massive world. So they tried to make the biggest world they could, and it's canonically like part of the world because they're on a Titan, but that's about all it has in common. There are subtle nods if you played the games to it, but it's like you could, if you played it without playing any of their games, you'd never know.
This is how much I know about this series. I thought Xenoblade X was this game we're playing now.
No.
And this Xenoblade X, or whatever the hell they call it, is exactly what it was my first time being exposed to Xenoblade. I did not play it. It caught my eye. Anytime a game gets a really high review,
right,
I will at least look at it. And I thought, I don't know that I have the time to spend on my dusty Wii U that never got played for anything besides the Mario games.
Yeah.
That was about it, though.
I think the Wii U had probably 10 must-plays on it. And that's because I'm a Nintendo fan. So, I used to be until they suspended my account.
Is it back yet, by the way?
No.
Oh.
It's going to be 45 days, they say. Guys, do me a favor. Never, ever buy a CD key or try to use a CD key for Nintendo, because what they do, if a lot of these CD key places, I found out what happened in my case is I went to this website, g2a.com, which I will never, ever use again. And they have this like online marketplace where people can go sell CD keys. So the scam is somebody goes on Nintendo's eShop, buys the CD key from Nintendo, posts the CD key on G2A, waits till someone buys it, for a discount, and I think I saved like $10 over the eShop, and I don't even know why I did it. Actually, I do know why I did it. I bought Xenoblade Chronicles 2 a few months ago because I wanted to replay it, and I had bought the physical edition at release because I wasn't sure how it was going to go, and I ended up, after playing through it one time a couple years ago, I traded that physical release in. I bought the CD key because I didn't want to pay full price to buy the game again because it's been 2.5 years, and whoever bought the game on G2A or whoever put it on G2A sold it to me for $10 off. Then they did a charge back to Nintendo to the eShop through their credit card. So what happens is Nintendo has no recourse on that. They get billed. They lose the money from the CD key that they sold in the eShop, and then they have to pay their bank this chargeback fee, which can be like upwards of another $60. So they're at $120, and their only recourse is to say, okay, that CD key was activated on Nintendo Online by Krunnky. So I just get an email from PayPal in the middle of the night. Your agreement with Nintendo's online service has been terminated by Nintendo. Call them. That's all it says. So what that means is I can't go on the eShop and download any games that aren't currently on my Switch. I can't play any online games. I can't log into Animal Crossing, and this is not a woe is me. This is my own stupid fault. I knew this was a risk when I did it. I thought it would never happen, but here we are. So
you're still able to play on your account though on your Switch, right?
I can play anything I want locally, physical games or anything I happen to already have downloaded and installed. But if I have more games, and this is the Wii U, this is the Wii, this is the Switch, this is the 3DS. All my games on all those systems are inaccessible to me right now, except for the ones that are currently physically loaded on it.
That is a harsh punishment.
Yeah.
I do understand that they can't differentiate between somebody that has stolen the key and somebody that purchased it. Well, that's rough, though, and hopefully it gets resolved for you.
It will, from what I've read. Yeah, from what I've read. So, I've kind of gone around. Am I pissed? Yeah, but I'm mature enough to realize that if you engage in these third-party CD key sites, which I have for years, but I didn't realize how much these scammers were using it as a smokescreen to do the shitty stuff that they're doing. So that's stopping. I'm not going to do that anymore. The idea that I always have had is, okay, somebody goes and buys a bunch of CD keys while the game's on sale or while, and then they wait and wait. Like for an older game that's been around forever, it seems like more likely to be done that way, or more likely to be done legitimately, but I have no idea. That's just a guess. So I am a firm believer in not screwing over development companies and publishers on video games because I love video games and I want to support their endeavors.
Absolutely. I mean, do you remember when it was really easy years ago to steal games? And,
oh yeah.
It was, I don't even know how to do it anymore. That's how I just don't.
No,
there's no point in my life. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I don't want to encourage the use of these bloated ass DRMs like de novo.
Right.
If especially because I my wife also streams in the house. We'll have a couple of machines up and running at all times. I have a streaming machine, and when you stream a video game on Twitch or wherever, or you're encoding, you're using a lot of your processor to encode that image. So when the last big one was Rise of the Tomb Raider. Actually, Call of Duty is this way too. When Rise of the Tomb Raider came out, it taxed her machine just to run it, right? And she wanted to stream it at the same time. Well, the problem is that de novo is like a CPU limiter on purpose. And some of the things that de novo does is it looks at how much the game process needs, and then it fills up the rest with this mindless busy work. And the idea is to stop third-party hacks and things from letting the game bypass the DRM. So it doesn't give a shit if you're streaming. So you cannot stream some games because it'll literally tax your CPU to where you either crash randomly or it's choppy as hell and the game doesn't run well and it cannot be encoded. We got around that a little bit with when NVIDIA came out with their encoder that runs on your graphics card, but when you're playing a brand new cutting edge game like Rise of the Tomb Raider, guess what you need? Your graphics card.
Exactly.
So
I just read there was a large game, and I can't remember which one. It just removed their copy protection. Or not their copy protection, their hack protection. Might have been
DRM, de novo. Yeah. It's the number one.
Who
right
removed it? It was like
Doom. I think it was Doom. Doom Eternal.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Because they announce when it happens, because a lot of Twitch streamers will wait for that day before they try to stream it, because it's almost impossible to single PC stream it before that. And
that explains a lot when I play with streamers and they can't run a game.
Yep. You'll notice the new Call of Duty, it runs like hot garbage to a lot of people. And I don't think it's 100% de novo. I think there's also some kind of proprietary thing in their engine. And I don't know that they are proprietary. There's some kind of unique thing to their engine that has a hardware conflict somewhere, because I've seen people who have brand new cutting edge machines who can run anything have trouble with that game, yet other people who have 10-year-old machines can run it and it doesn't have any problems. So it's very, very strange. And what our friend that we play Call of Duty with, Show You, who's a Twitch streamer, he has a lot of problems running it on the Battle Royale mode, but when he plays the multiplayer mode, same engine, no problems at all. So I think what it has something to do with draw distance. I've been trying to figure out if there's like one particular setting that we could tell people, hey, turn this down, and that should help you in the Battle Royale mode.
Right.
But anyway, Xenoblade Chronicles, right?
Yeah, it was just like, we're 16 minutes in. We haven't talked about it that much.
Well, this is an impressions video, so I can tell you right now, I've played the game all the way through. I don't remember a lot of the early stuff because it's been 10 years since I played it, but I really did. I really have been enjoying it. Why don't you talk about your impressions of it so far?
So it's a little... Okay. I've thought this out. I wrote it down, and now I'm double checking my thinking.
Yeah, no problem.
So this is one of those games that can appear as a simple kind of button mashy, even though it's not. It's turn based, but it's action based.
Yeah.
Games that you feel like you don't need to put any thought into any of it, and you can play a fair amount of the game without thinking about it.
Yep.
However, this is a layered game, and these are the games that really start to hook me, where you start thinking through combinations, you start thinking about how you're going to – and this is really just about the combat I'm talking about, because the story so far for me, 20 hours in, has been kind of generic. So I'm trying different players, leading with, as you suggested, use different leaders, and I've been doing that pretty much for the last 10 hours of the game. This game is fantastic. You really have to get past some of the dialogue, some of the cheesiness that are added into games like this.
Yeah.
If they annoy you. And if you can get past that and really get into that system, because there's the bonding system, there's the combo system, there's the system for basically your the respect you get in the villages, and all these things kind of all tied together. It's a lot of things, and it can be overwhelming at first, but so far it's been amazing. Now I do have a couple complaints, but this is a 10-year-old game.
So you're talking about the texture work of some of the spots?
No, not at all. I'm talking about the questing system. So the questing system so far, I didn't realize at first, most quests, you don't get experience. You get money or items, or money and items, and sometimes you get XP.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's an interesting angle for most of these games, in my opinion, because you're used to going through games basically since really WoW. World of Warcraft was probably the first game to really lean into a questing system in an RPG. Yep, it's an MMO. And yes, games had that before, but that game really showed us how it should run. And that game impacted every game ever since.
Yeah, so, in fact, this is a remaster. They actually added stuff into the questing system. Because if you think this sucks, you know how when you're running around in the world, there's a yellow dot that shows you which way to go on your mini map for the story.
Yeah.
That wasn't in the original. And you know how when you're running around the little blue dots you have to collect that could be quest items or whatever.
Right.
They have red exclamation points on the minimap if they're things you need to collect. That wasn't there either.
Right.
You literally had to go to an area and just wander around and find the stuff in the original.
And that would have made a 100-hour game like a 300-hour game if you didn't really pay attention to where you're going. Because a lot of times in these games, you just tend to wander and not really put together. It's kind of like when you're driving, and if you don't use GPS, you typically will learn the route. But if you use GPS, it'll take you longer to remember without GPS, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because you didn't spend the time committing it to memory or putting landmarks in your brain.
The one big problem I have with the questing system is it seems buggy, but the reason it seems buggy is because you'll go to a point to turn in. Sometimes you have to go back to turn in quests. A lot of times you don't have to go back to finish a quest, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, the only time you have to go back is if there's a follow-up quest to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you go back and the guy isn't there or the NPC isn't there. And I think it's based on timing. So you have to figure out what time of day you're supposed to do it. Sometimes it'll tell you something. Most of the time it hasn't. So that bothered me, and I just realized it this morning, like, oh, it's timing. The other thing that really bugs me, the one thing that really bugs me is I don't know what level I should be for some of these. Yep. So I went back to Colony 6, to that area.
Uh-huh.
And I got a quest to just like get a mushroom cap and get this. Well, the mushroom cap is by a bunch of pods, which spawn those giant apes, which are level 75.
And you're like level 30, right?
Right. 35. And then the spider on the point is 78. And I'm like, I need this item to move forward this other quest, but there's no way that I know of currently to do it. Now, I tried to sneak in and just grab it, and if they killed me, they killed me. But I would engage in the combat before I had a chance.
I don't remember that quest specifically, but here's what I can tell you about that. And I agree with you. There are definitely flaws in the questing program.
Yeah.
They've polished up the turd a little bit for the definitive edition, but first off, foremost, you're going to go back to those areas later, and that may be a quest that they're telling that you need to go back to.
Right.
So there should be. I wish there was a level recommendation on the quest itself, but there's not.
That's all I need. That's all I need, and I'm happy.
When the very first town, which I went back, here's how I do the quest, just to help you, if it helps you streamline your process. I'll go to the town and I'll pick up every question mark, and then I'll move the clock ahead 3 to 4 hours, check again, move it to 3 to 4, because while there is certain timing on monsters and NPCs that when they're available, you can change the time to any time at any time of the game. You just hit pause, change the time, and it just warps you right to that time. So it kind of defeats the purpose of having a day-night cycle and a time schedule for this stuff to happen. But you know, they're known to try.
Man, we don't have hours to wait for that time to tick off.
They definitely, as Monolith Soft has a tendency to like overly complicate their processes. Some of the things I love about the game can also really detract you. But the other thing I was going to tell you is that like when you're looking for the quest will tell you if the monster you need is at night. I know that much. It'll tell you it only comes out when it's raining.
It's raining. Yep.
Yeah. And the other thing about Monolith Soft is after playing through 3 of their games, well, 2.5, 2 3/4, is that I don't think they honestly intended for anybody to 100% the quests, because a lot of them, when I played this game the first time, I was way over leveled for the last boss, and I didn't do even 75% of them. And there's some things that, like, I guess you've got to the part where you get I'm not gonna say her name because people may not be that far, but the gal with the staff,
yes,
whose dad is involved in the story. That's about all I'll say.
I'm not there yet, but I'm okay. I have her. I'm going there.
There is an item back in her town that is hidden like within the place. They're goggles or they're glasses, and they're unique. They're purple and they're unique, and they have a stat on them that makes her the most broken, overpowered character in the game.
Uh,
And I missed it the first time because when you get this character, every class has a Holy Trinity role, or some of them even have multiple depending on how you spec them. And she is presented as like a healer type when you get her. Was that your impression, or am I remembering wrong?
no, it's absolutely the impression you get if you look at the abilities she has.
Yeah, she's like a paper tiger, basically.
Yes,
she has no ability to dodge. Agility is what makes you dodge in this game, and really high agility characters are almost impossible to hit when they're in a group at the end game. Because then they make the best tanks because they cannot be hit. You don't need to block anything if you're not getting hit.
Right.
And
you need to hold aggro.
Yeah, she's got no defense at all, and she's got these heal spells by default. The fact that when they give her to you, I think all she has equipped are like heal type stuff. So you're like, oh, she's a healer. Well, she's actually the best caster you can have if you switch her spec to DPS.
Yeah, I noticed that, and you've talked about it, but like they usually come with 2 sets of abilities.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why the hell would I use this ability with all these other abilities? And it really comes down to finding those books to figure out what skills. And
yes,
and
your character gets ability points that you spend to like power up their abilities, but you can't power up their entire arsenal all the way. You're going to be limited. Well, you can if you do like grinding. One of the things that here's the flaw in this game's armor, and when it comes to the leveling up system in the definitive edition, they put in something called like expert mode, or is that what it's called? Expert mode, yeah, where you can basically change how you get XP. When you have expert mode on and you kill an enemy, you get 50% of the XP, and 50% goes into like a bank that you can use later. And at any time, you can just raise and lower the levels up until the maximum amount of XP you have. So if you're level 20 and you go back to do some quests in an area, you can lower your level to whatever you're fighting there. And that what a lot of people I've seen online say is you want to lower it to 1 level below what you're fighting. Because when you kill it, you get not only do you get more, you get the XP that you normally would, or normal XP, but you also get more affinity points and ability points. So you know how you go to level up, let's say Shulk's main attack, the
backstab,
but no, the Monado Buster.
Yes.
If it costs like 5,000 points for the next level, and you have 100, and you've been playing for days, it's because you're killing shit that's too low, and you don't get any points for that. But if you go back, if you go to the area and you put your level 1 level below like the average mob in the area, you get way more AP, even though you're not getting much anything else. Yeah. And the game doesn't do a good job of showing you or telling you that.
No.
The only reason I know is because I'm like, what the hell is this expert mode about? And I watch some people talking about it, and they're like, yeah, it really helps with this like late game problem that you probably don't even know exists. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's funny because you're just talking about another problem is Shulk. I didn't know you could level up those Monado abilities until I was kind of just putzing through it one day. I went, oh no, I could do this.
I only know because I did a Twitch playthrough so far, and I'm doing a YouTube playthrough, so I've seen everything twice. There is like one of the 100 tutorial screens you probably thumbed through. Oh. It's in there. It's in one of them, but it's like in the middle of combat, so you're like, wait, what's happening? And then it pops up. Okay, right. And then you go into combat. So I can totally see me missing something like that. In fact, I probably did on the first one.
Yeah, I definitely did. I've missed some things for sure, but I think that's the beauty of this game is you can play it like a straight RPG. Okay, yeah, Ryan's your tank. We're just going to use him as a tank. We're going to use this other person to heal, and Shulk's going to be your DPS, and you can play it straight through.
I played the original 10 years ago, and I didn't start clicking with the combat system until I was probably halfway through the game.
I feel like that happened with the second one with me.
Yeah. When I played it, I knew I wasn't doing it right, but like you said, I was like just button mashing my way in, and I got over leveled basically, and I could just, face tank the whole thing.
Right. And I think it's interesting because the second one, I absolutely did that. And that's probably why I burned out. I was 70 or 80 hours in, and I never finished it. And I really wanted. I've been wanting to go back for, when did that come out? 2 years ago.
Over 2, yeah.
And I want to go back. And if I can finish this one, I will probably go back to that one. I'll start over because I don't remember much. But, that game had some systems too that I haven't seen in this. The fishing stuff, the way to level up that annoying character.
You have to narrow that down a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Are you talking about the race of the Napon?
Yeah, the Napons or whatever.
Yeah. So in this game, there are, in both games actually, there are a race of Napon, which are little like pineapple looking fuzzball creatures that talk like a 2-year-old Yoda. Like their grammar's all messed up, and this whole game. I know we're just shitting on it so far, but trust me, we both are enjoying it for different reasons. And if Gorby makes it to the end, I know he's going to like the story when he gets to the end, because have you ever played this game called I'm drawing a blank on it. It's a generic shooting game that takes place in Dubai.
No.
Anyway, I'll think of the name later and insert it here, but the game is basically, it came out probably 10 years ago, and it's one of the highest rated shooters ever. And when you play it, you're like, what in the hell why do people like this game? This is the most generic thing I've ever played. But it's because they do that to set your expectations for later. Like, it's like a horror movie where everything's normal for the first half hour, and just so it feels very mundane and normal. And then when the horror aspect comes in, you're like, what the hell's happening?
Right. Is it Spec Ops?
Spec Ops The Line, yes.
Yeah.
Have you played it?
No.
Spec Ops The Line is, I'm going to ruin Spec Ops The Line, not ruin it, but I'm going to give away one of the twists.
It's okay. I'm not going to play it. It's 8 years old.
It's older than that, I think. Skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't hear it. But basically, you play as a guy who's being sent into Dubai to rescue a general who's kind of gone rogue. And he's like become disillusioned with the military, blah, blah, blah. And you're probably halfway through the movie.
So that's that's the storyline of Apocalypse Now, right?
I do. Okay. Yes. So you get about halfway through the movie or the game, and your character starts making these decisions. You're just playing. You don't get to like choose necessarily an outcome that affects it. You just choose how you go through it. So you get these choices, but the meat of what, like, you find these villagers, and there's some terrorists in there, and you have the ability to phosphorus grenade them or basically just Agent Orange them to death, and you get to choose how you do it, but you don't get to choose whether or not you do it. And it starts giving you these no-win situations, and toward the end of the game, it turns out you are the disillusioned general, and you've gone insane, and you don't know until the end of the game when like stuff like starts moving and changing positions. Like in the game engine, you're in like a Dubai mall, and there's mannequins everywhere, and you're shooting, you turn around, all of a sudden the mannequins have changed positions, and and it's done so well because while you're playing, you're like, wait, wasn't that? You're not sure. You start questioning yourself, and that's what the game does. Genius, and the ending is really insane because after the realization narratively hits, it like pauses and goes back and shows all the decisions as they were in reality, and you get to like examine how you made those decisions to do these really awful things, how you justified them in your mind at the time. Because the way the game sets it up, it seems like a rough but fair thing to do, but in retrospect, it's awful, and like from a different perspective, it's awful. One of the best games of all time that I've just ruined for you guys. I hope you don't mind.
I would never have played it.
Yeah,
but you telling me that story, it's a great concept when games are thinking outside the box. Yes, he definitely is taking the story of Heart of Darkness or Apocalypse Now.
Absolutely, yeah,
twisting
inspired that,
and that's. Well, as far as I know, I don't know Heart of Darkness. I know that's the basis of Apocalypse Now. I just don't know if that's what happens in Apocalypse Now or in Heart of Darkness. Anyway,
you take Heart of Darkness, you add a bunch of cocaine-fueled guys that are disillusioned with the forget they're even making a movie in the jungle, and you get Apocalypse Now. But so Xenoblade sort of has that. It like, I think it starts off very strong because it's an unusual world that your characters are on these giant titans, and you're literally traveling up and down their bodies in the story. And it is a slow burn. I will give you that. But what I found really interesting about the story is I'm trying to think where you are in the story. You haven't even got to the first big twist yet.
No, I am at the point where I'm leaving so when I get to a point where I'm leaving an area, I try and go back and kind of clean up a little.
Yeah.
And then I move forward. So I just finished in the Nippon village, and I'm going to the sea to see her dad.
Okay. I'm going to make a recommendation to you and anybody listening. If you're playing this game for the first time and you find yourself getting kind of like bored of the tedium of the questing system, I would recommend doing only the quests that appear to give you like an item. And even then it's not necessary, because you're going to run into things later on that you're going to need. And instead of, if you find yourself under leveled or you feel like you need some levels, just go grind a bit. Go to an area where there's some named mobs you can kill, because they'll drop full sets of armor for the newest party member that you have that are really good.
Wow.
Early on in the game, one of the first areas you go to is called Tephra Cave. And there's like some frogs and some of those bunnies in there that have clubs in their tails and these weird things. There's a couple of there's like 3 named mobs in there, and because I went through there to do some quests, I 100% on my YouTube playthrough, I'm 100%ing all the quests, which I do not recommend that you do. I killed the named mob like 10 times in a row while I was running through there collecting stuff, and he dropped an entire set for Ryan that was like that I'm still using at 15 more levels. So I would recommend that you don't even need to buy stuff at the vendor. I know the quests give you money to buy the vendor stuff and the books. That's the only thing you need to buy at the vendor. I'm sorry, is the books. But right. You can always max out the ones you want and then go back to the town prior, because you can warp to any place you've been before at any time, any town. So what you do is you go on to the next area, you level up. When you have a couple, you only need like 25,000 gold to be able to buy all the books from a town. Go back to the town you were before, buy them all up, and then just warp right back. That's what I recommend, because what I would recommend you play this game for is the story, because the story is interesting. And I've seen a lot of sci-fi movies. I played a lot of sci-fi games, and I've read some sci-fi books. I've never quite seen a story set up this way, and I'm interested in you, Gorby, coming back on and telling us what you think of the ending if and when you get there, because I think as being a longtime RPG player, you get caught in this. Well, I got to collect all the things. I got to do all the quests. I want to know the story. The quest is not, the story is not told in the quest. It's told in the cutscenes. More like an action game. If you've done a lot of the quests so far, what have they predominantly been? Go here, do that. Go here, grab this. There's probably 2 to 5 big quest chains in each town, and even those are, hey, in the very first town, there's one about a woman who's lost her son to the invasion. The Mechon invaded right in the opening of the game, and her son dies, and she wants these memorial items for him, and you can get invested in that story. Don't get me wrong; it's sad, but it's nothing compared to the main storyline, which is all told in cutscenes.
I gotta tell you, that specific quest, I found gear later on for that.
Yep.
I have one missing item. I thought about, I have one of them left, and I was like, But I'm literally at that point where I'm about to push the story, because I always find in these games it's real easy for me to start focusing and getting rabbit hole and burning out. Yep. That's why I don't play any of the Bethesda games in particular, the big ones. I just I remember playing Oblivion for 50 hours and never doing a story quest, and I burned out.
I think it's been my impression, and I don't know, I didn't read this, I didn't read a quote from them, but I believe they don't intend for you to do 100% of everything that's available in this game. I think the idea that there is so much that you can't do it all was what they were going for. They wanted you to have a world you felt like, wow, I had an amazing time and I didn't even do half the quests. And in that way, if you play through it again, you can do different things on a separate playthrough. And trust me, if you're anything like me, you're gonna want to play through at least the intro again, because it sort of things change and unfold toward the end that you start questioning all the decisions you made up until then.
Right.
And you wonder, and when you play through it a second time, the things that happen, the cutscenes that happen mean something different. Part of the reason I've been having so much fun playing this is because I'm meeting all the characters again for the first time. Well, I know what happens. So I know that person does this and that person does this. And it's sort of like when you watch The Sixth Sense the second time.
Yep. Oh, you're like, oh yeah.
How did I not see this? It's smacking me in the face the whole time. So
exactly.
I would urge you specifically, and anybody who's prone to want 100% everything, don't try to 100% this game. It's not worth it. It's not fun. And B, there's nothing to be gained from it. Like by the time you do all the quests that are available in the starting town, you will have out-leveled the entire next area, and it's only going to get worse from there.
Yeah, I feel like I've been higher level than I should.
Yeah.
I think one of the mini boss or boss fights they put me in was a little rough the first time, and then I don't know. I didn't go back and level. Let's put it that way.
What they're trying to do there is, if you don't have a firm grasp by let's say the third area, if you don't have a firm grasp on the combat system and doing chain attacks and positional attacks, you're going to have a rough time. We'll talk about through the third area, because I think that's where we both are. There's a couple. You start out with just Shulk, and then you add Ryan, who's a tank. Then you add Charlotte, who's a healer. And once you have that trinity, the game really starts to open up where you do chain attacks more often, and the affinity system is how your characters relate to each other. Mm-hmm. If that trinity has, I think it's the third level or higher, every time you do a chain attack, you'll get a button, quick time event prompt, or the B button circles in, and you have to push it just in time. You can extend a chain attack up to like 9 times. You can do 9 chain attacks in a row.
So how do I know which attacks to do next?
There's multiple. There's 2 ways to go. You get bonuses for doing all the same color. So like there's red. Red is the most common, but Charlotte doesn't have a red attack. You're going to notice.
Yep.
So the other way you can do a chain attack is to do the break, stagger, daze combo. And after that, when you could do 9 of them in a row, you can stagger them, topple them, and daze them. And if they're frozen because it's in a chain attack, if you do that first, you get like 10 times crit chance while they're down on the ground. So then once they're on the ground, you start unloading your like major all red attacks or bonuses from doing that, and you will mess them up. You can do, I'm level 20 and I did 72,000 damage to a boss. Wow. in one chain attack round, and killed it instantly. And that's the thing that like the game has this like mechanic where you have to ramp up. And it also works against you. If you're fighting a mob that's really high, you notice one of the common complaints of this game is people say the characters chatter too much during combat. Mm-hmm. And it's annoying if you don't need it, if you don't know that you need it. But when he says I'm powering up, he basically, everything they say is an indication of something that's going on in the battle system. And then when that starts to click, they'll yell their attacks out. They'll say, I'm powering up, or I don't know about this, or are you crazy? That's them getting not demotivated, but getting discouraged. And you can go encourage a player by running next to him, pushing B. It uses part of your chain attack meter, so I don't like to do it. But this game is made for long, protracted boss fights. Or this battle system is. So in order to fight giant monsters that seem impossible if you were by yourself, you have to you have to get in there, keep your characters motivated. You have to get the chain attacks rolling. You have to survive until you start getting into that chain attack mode, and that's what your tanks are for, is to be able to hold aggro, mitigate damage until you get in these chain attacks. You can really start laying the wood to them. But it's complicated, and the thing that drew me toward the game eventually on the combat side is when that stuff started to click for me. I would definitely, because you can go back to the any tutorials, I would go back to the tutorial screens for the combat every now and again and just say, okay, what am I missing? And you talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 2. That one's way even more complicated.
Right. I remember looking at that chain system in the second one and not understanding it.
Yeah, the second one you had to roll out these, all the abilities had elements to them, and you had to roll out these like specific combos to put an element bubble over top of them, and you could get these bubbles floating around them, and different bubble combinations when you could then burst them on a specific attack. And if you burst them in a particular order, it would like explode and do like this massive damage to them. And like literally, it was the only way to kill some of the bosses. But luckily, as crazy as Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition combat system may seem, it's way easier to understand.
Exactly. Do you think they're going to make a third?
I would imagine they have. If they did, they started years ago. They probably started before 2 even came out. Xenoblade 1 took forever for them to make. X was made by their off team, like a secondary team. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention, when they made Xenoblade Chronicles X in the Wii U, because they're a second party developer, they were brought in to help with a couple projects off Nintendo proper. And the reason Breath of the Wild is so big is because they use the same code that Xenoblade Chronicles X did to like generate and save and load mapping.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, and that's why Nintendo's branching out with the help of these places. But so we're kind of all over the place here. But one thing I do want to mention is Monolith Soft, the people who make this game, are a husband and wife team that both used to work for Square back in the Final Fantasy era. Like the husband and wife, one of them was an animator, one of them was a coder, and they helped with the stories of like Final Fantasy 4 and 5 and 6.
Those are the big ones. Well, 6 is supposed to be the best story, right?
Exactly. And they had ideas they wanted to get in Final Fantasy 6 that didn't get picked up. And they said, after this, can we make our own game? And they made this game called Xenogears, which was on PS1, PS2. I've never played it. I don't really know. And then they made another one called Xenosaga as employees at Square. And then they left there. Actually, I think they only made one there. They left Square after they got married, and they made their own place, Monolith Soft. They published a couple games, including Xenosaga, and I think there's a couple more in between. And then Nintendo, they were run out of funding for Xenoblade because they were way behind and over budget. And Nintendo came out and said, we love what you guys do. You're passionate about games. Why don't you let us, why don't you come under our umbrella? They bought controlling interest in them and just left them alone. And that's when they made Xenoblade, but it took them forever to get it out. When it finally came out, it came to America late, the whole story from there. But it's a really interesting concept because they're the Xeno games, because, they're all spiritual successors, because you can't make a direct sequel if Sony published the first one, or Square published the first one. Exactly. So that's why the games have these tangential connections. Like in Xenoblade 2, there's a character you can find, a rare blade called Cosmos, who is, I believe, one of the main characters from one of the original Xeno games, like either Xenogears or Xenosaga. I don't remember which, but I remember seeing like a PS1, PS2 version of Cosmos. I'm like, what the hell is that? That's from Xenoblade 2. Well, no, it was originally from that other game.
Exactly. That's cool. That's really cool when they do stuff like that.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up here and just say, like, again, this is a layered game. And those are the games that really pique my interest once I realize the layers are there. Sometimes you don't get the layers. And I'm not going to say that the new Final Fantasy VII Remake is not layered like this, but it's just not. It's a different kind of game. Yeah. And people would compare these two. But I think you get a lot more layers in a lot of these games when it is semi-turn-based, even though this really isn't turn-based. I don't know how to explain. It's not action, though, either. There's probably a term for it. I'm unaware. It's
a lot more like the new Final Fantasy combat system than you think, because it has moments where you're fine. It has moments where you can run around, do whatever you want, but it also has the chain attack system, which is sort of like when Final Fantasy, when you can actually pause and select what you want to do. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, it slows it down to almost stopped. But in Xenoblade, when you initiate a chain attack, it gives you your time. You can do whatever you want. So it's similar, I think.
I guess you're right. But what I mean by that is I feel like, and I could be wrong, but all the Final Fantasies I've played, and I've played turn-based and I've played the action-based ones, I feel like they're never that complicated or intriguing.
Right.
Because sometimes complication makes it bad, but this is simple enough you can figure it out, but it also has a lot of complexity. Sort of like learning chess.
Exactly. I would say that this combat system has a hump to get over. Once you get over, like, you can understand the basic trio of break, topple. Break and topple is the first thing you should learn how to do. In fact, that when you fight those robots at the first attack, it forces you to learn that because it won't let you through without it.
Right.
And then but you got to keep remembering that while an enemy's toppled, if you get him on the ground and then initiate a chain attack where basically time stands still and it lets you pick exactly what to do while he's on the ground, that's when you really start seeing the massive damage come out.
Right.
But yeah, I would recommend this to anybody unless you know that that like I don't have 100 hours. If you have a backlog and you want to finish 5 games in the next couple of months, don't get this one.
Right. And one last thing for me is this game plays well as a handheld on the Switch. The Switch I can handle holding, unlike the DS Lite. And this one lends itself to being picked up and played wherever you want to play it.
Yeah, it's a good game because there are times where you just you're not ready for a story. You just want to run around and explore, and it's really good for that. Do you have the big fat Joy-Con handles?
No, I don't.
Oh, you should look into those. If I don't like playing the Switch in dock mode, A, because I'm blind, and B, because my hands are too big. But if you go on like Amazon or someplace, they have these like grips that go around the Joy-Con. Yeah, and it feels more like an Xbox controller in your hand.
Let me ask you this. This is a side note. Have you had problems in undocked mode with the Joy-Cons just coming out?
No, I don't play undocked mode ever.
Oh man. I've been having that issue for a while, and I'm trying to figure it out, but that's okay. Sorry.
No problem. Usually, if somebody puts the Joy-Cons in backwards, and they can break that tab by pulling it out,
I'm sure that's what's happened.
If you have multiple, I don't know, children messing with your console, you might ask them.
And they're constantly taking them out. So.
Well, guys, I appreciate you being here. Guys, Gorby, I appreciate you being here for this episode, man. I hope you end up playing it. I can only love a game so much before I can't make other people love it. But
I get it. 3 hours this morning. Let's put it that way.
Well, if people want to complain directly at you on Twitter, how could they go about that?
I guess I'm at Gorbiak. I don't tweet often. I'm on there a lot.
All right, at Gorby AK. And how's your stream going? Are you streaming these days?
No.
You streamed what exactly once or twice?
Exactly once. I'm sure if I gave it time, I'd be fine. I just have enough other shit going on in my life.
Well, you've moved since then, right? So you have more of a private area.
I do. I am in my own office now, and I could totally set it up now.
If you wanted to.
If I wanted to, and I have a closing door and all those things.
The first time you streamed, you were like right in the middle of your living room, and people were walking by in the background. It was awesome. It was fun.
That's what I get for having all these kids.
Well, thanks for being here, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.